So Daoism places emphasis on harmony with nature, on health and longevity. And some of the practice in relation to these aspects are very much practiced in the everyday life in China. So just sort of give you some a short background about Daoism, but I'm sure, you know, Manuel will share a lot more with us in today's talk. I would like to obviously take this opportunity to thank my colleague, Tabia Hackroth, and Francis Noble of Leeds Confucius Institute for the work to make this happening. So without further ado from me, let us invite Mr. Manuel Parreno to share his thoughts with us on Laozi. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Karen Wang, as well as your team for this opportunity for me to be able to come and join you to share with you something that I feel passionate about on Chinese philosophy and in particular Laozi's philosophy. I remind you that just as we have started quite interactively via the use of chat, please feel free to record any questions or thoughts that you would like to ask me at the end of this presentation. Well, welcome to this new world or way of seeing and understanding life with Laozi. The Chinese, as I lived amongst them for just over 4 years, I was able to see that they gain inspiration in their culture from philosophers and teachings of philosophers such as Laozi, and really gain strength to help them see them through also difficult times in life, as we all go through them. Philosophy itself offers a point of view. It does not offer a physical solution to any problem. And so its usefulness is precisely in this point of view and understanding. The famous quote in Chinese philosophy when referring to this is the usefulness of the useless, in that there is no physical solution, as I've mentioned, so it is useless to that degree. But the usefulness of philosophy might well be hidden, perhaps, so to speak, to the untrained eye, or if we simply do not pay enough attention. This person, Neil A. Maxwell, his name escaped me, sorry. He's an American. He passed away already in 2004. He was an American scholar, an educator, as well as a religious leader. He went through cancer and leukemia, and afterwards he was interviewed, and when he was asked about his experience, he shared at the conclusion of his remarks that the reflection in the midst of suffering is very useful. In another occasion, he also said, quote, "The great challenge is to refuse to let the bad things that happen to us do bad things to us. That is the crucial difference between adversity and tragedy," close quote. And I thought that this was a very nice quote to help put in perspective the usefulness of philosophy, of Chinese philosophy, where, well, we all go through adversity in our lives, through difficulties, and certainly currently through this pandemic. Yet our view, our response to our circumstances could be the difference between going through adversity and certainly hard times, or also getting into a tragedy. And I hope that throughout this talk today, you will find something that will be useful to you, that will be helpful, that you can take along with you. So thank you for being here today. The topic of today, as Ms. Wang has already shared, is managing anxiety amidst a pandemic. What does Laozi have to share with us? Well, he does teach us a lot and is quite deep and profound. What I share with you today, I hope will be helpful in this regard. And I'd like to start with a question for you to keep in the back of your mind. The question is, what is knowledge? And we will see how Laozi understands what knowledge is, or how he defines it. Laozi teaches us that there is this concept that he calls Dao, which is how we are all connected, not just as human beings, but the whole of the universe, indeed. Laozi sees the world, and his philosophy is a very naturalistic philosophy. He believes that we have been endowed by Dao with the ability to make right choices for ourselves. And so we can lead a spontaneous and natural life and enjoy harmony because of those right choices that he trusts we are able to make. Two concepts to share with you at the beginning that are important, that help us better understand Laozi, are the concept of inner nature. Laozi believes that we are dual beings, that we have our physical bodies that we can see and touch, that we also have an inner nature. And this inner nature has been given us of Dao. Chuangzi, a Daoist philosopher, speaking of this inner nature, he taught that, quote, things obtained it so they could exist. And the second concept is that of light. Laozi believes also that Dao put into human beings an inner light, our conscience, if you will. And so at the very center of his philosophy, or the basis of his philosophy, where everything is sustained by, is Dao. Dao represents the absolute truth. And everything and anything that comes from Dao is good. On the one hand, we have our physical bodies. So we're born from a father and mother, but inside those bodies, Dao has put in us our inner nature. But Dao has also given us the light to help us discern what the right thing to do is. And that part or that portion of Dao is in every human being. Speaking of Dao, Laozi said that if one looks for Dao, there's nothing solid to see. If one listens for it, there's nothing to hear. Yet if one uses it, it is inexhaustible. And we can use it because we have this inner light that teaches us those norms or standards that Dao itself follows. Lastly, one more thing to put into perspective what Dao is. If I was to point at Dao, I would have to say that in this picture, Dao is at the background, shapeless and embracing everything that exists. That everything in the universe has come from Dao, and that therefore we are also a product of Dao. And thinking of the animal kingdom, Laozi said that the reason why they behave the way they do is precisely because they follow their inner nature, which also Dao placed in them. I'd like to share with you very briefly how Dao works in the universe, to then see how it applies to us in our lives. Well, we have chaos versus cosmos. What is the difference between them? Dao governs everything by law. Now, to create, it is not to get something out of nothing. We see magicians do that. We may see them pull up a hat, say there's nothing in here, and then suddenly bring out a rabbit, for example. Instead, to create means to organize matter that already existed. And that is done through the law. So that when we apply the law to matter, chaos becomes organized matter. In other words, cosmos. And the result of cosmos is always order and life. Well, Laozi teaches that in our lives, we also have the opportunity to choose to follow these natural laws, even our inner light, which will guide us to enjoying greater harmony and inner peace in our lives. Let me share an example with you that I've made up, but I think it is representative of what I'm sure all of us have somehow experienced before. So, have you ever witnessed or seen two people, perhaps you weren't expecting it, but suddenly you see two people arguing? I'm sure, well, did you think, whoa, harmony has been disrupted? Probably not. Or what about the opposite? Perhaps, and this is another scenario I'm thinking of, but have you experienced the opposite? Maybe you were in line and the woman in front of you was stepped on her foot by the person in front of her. And you could tell she got hurt. The man perhaps turned and said, and apologized and said, oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, are you okay? And she says, it's okay, don't worry about it. And did you then think, whoa, harmony is embracing me? Well, probably not. But Laozi teaches us that harmony is preserved or really moved out of our lives via either obedience or disobedience to natural law. So we may have been experiencing these things, but we may not have considered them. How is it that they came about? Now, according to Laozi, when it comes to dealing with stressful circumstances, whatever they may be, knowledge plays a key role in how we handle ourselves. But Laozi has a particular understanding of what knowledge is, and I will get to that. But knowledge has more to do with understanding. For example, when it rains, who cries? The adult person, because of his understanding or her understanding, well, it's okay with it. It will stop raining soon enough. It's even good that it rains. We need rain after all. But my 5-year-old or 4-year-old just recently turned 5, not so long ago. I know that if he cannot go out to play football, for example, because it's raining or pouring outside, he will feel devastated. If it's, let's say, 10 a.m. and we have all day, and I explain to him that likely in an hour, it will stop raining. We will go outside afterwards. 1 hour is so long. And to him, it feels like it's forever. And he simply does not understand even the concept of time really well yet. This is a very basic example, but it does apply and it shows forth what is it that can help us gain or preserve harmony in our lives, even amidst difficult times, as we will continue to see now. For Laozi, the source of knowledge is Tao, and also the source of all that is good or of goodness. He uses water as a metaphor for the best quality, even for goodness, and to teach us what the quality that is, or attribute that is nearest to Tao is. And so I put this picture of these waterfalls as he used water in that regard. Now, when it comes to knowing the essence of Tao, we must first act in order to gain knowledge. Let's just put it this way. He said, to know the essence of Tao, one must first act in line with Tao. And again, we can do this because we have this light that Tao has given us, that we are born with. Laozi does put us all under one of three categories, depending on what we do when we learn of Tao. Laozi said that the lowest type of man, upon hearing Tao, laughs at it. The second type of person, upon hearing Tao, he or she is in two minds about it. But the best type of person, upon hearing Tao, immediately does his or her best to follow suit. Laozi also said that to understand oneself is to be illumined. Let me share how this understanding can come about by breaking this. First of all, to be illumined, to have this light bulb turn on. Oh, now I know, now I see, now I understand. How do we know this essence of Tao? Well, to know the essence of Tao, or to be illumined, is to understand oneself. But because within us we have our inner nature, our Tao nature, understanding oneself includes understanding our Tao nature. And from the quote above, we just read, Laozi gives us the solution of how to find out about Tao and learn to understand our Tao nature. It is by first acting. So, to understand oneself, or this understanding of ourselves, comes by adhering to Tao, meaning following this inner light that we have. Let me show you an image. Supposing that this circle represents Tao, and I know that Tao is shapeless, but to be practical, supposing that this circle is Tao, Laozi said that in Tao is the essence, and that in it lie the evidences. Now we have Tao. How do we get to the essence? Laozi teaches us, we get your Tao understanding, your understanding of this natural law of what you ought to do, and you act accordingly. And as you do, you will be walking towards seeing the essence of Tao, and in it is the evidence. Back to the example of what happens when it rains. The child, because he lacks understanding, cries. But the person who has exercised himself according to this inner light, the person who has taken one's inner light as his or her guide in life, acquires knowledge and even trust that things will somehow work out. Laozi speaks, Laozi speaks of how the soft overcomes the hard, meaning how we ought to interact with each other, how we know what the right thing to do is. And he says that this understanding is a fact known by all men, yet utilized by none. Once again, philosophy shows us, gives us an understanding, a point of view that will enhance our understanding of life itself and allow us, if we choose to enjoy greater harmony and greater peace in our lives when we face different circumstances, not only difficult ones, also when tough times are not the situation. Now, understanding, which again will be gained through acting on that inner light, may dismiss fear and anxiety. And here is the cycle. Oh, sorry, the cycle comes later, comes afterwards. First, let me quote from Spinoza, who said regarding understanding that insofar as the mind understands all things are necessary, so far has it greater power over the effects or suffers less from them. In Chinese philosophy, this understanding is explained with the following quote: to disperse emotion with reason. And here is the cycle of how we go about dispersing emotion with reason. We all feel anxiety or feel worried or sad throughout our lives at some points. This is the result of having a lack of understanding. And you may be thinking, how so? Well, although we all experience emotions, and that is only natural to go through different emotions, yet when we feel overly worried, overly sad, violently, if you will, uneasy, those unnatural emotions are the penalty, as we learn in philosophy, the penalty of violating the principle of nature. So it is the result of some actions that have not been taken. Remember how this character Guang means light, meaning that inner light that Laozi teaches us that we have. Because of this light, we have this knowledge, this understanding of these principles of nature that guide our behavior. When we go against them, these abnormal emotions that we go through are but the penalty of those actions. How can we fix this in our lives? We go to the last step in the circle. We use understanding to reduce our emotions. It is interesting that Laozi teaches, contrary to this penalty, that if we do act in line with our light, what we enjoy is harmony. And if we endure, if we persevere in this, in acting according to this understanding, we gain more knowledge and we continue to grow. There is not an end to learning of natural laws and to becoming our best self. We can always improve and further benefit. Now, gaining understanding improves our behavior most efficiently. Laozi did not say this quote, but he clearly, as I've studied it, believes it, that understanding of truths, of these natural laws or principles, will have an effect upon the individual to shape his or her behavior more effectively than using the sword or otherwise a forceful behavior on someone else to do what you would like him or her to do. Knowledge, making these distinctions between things and naming them, and is a phase that we all have to go through. Even the sage or the ideal man in Laozi's philosophy. For Laozi, knowledge, as it's been explained, is bad. The knowledge that he espouses is called knowledge that is no knowledge. And what it means to have no knowledge means to be one with Tao, to stop making distinctions and judging things, to become one with Tao, meaning to have that unity, because in your lifestyle, in your behavior, you're following this natural law, that you're allowing yourself to be guided and led by it. And this, much like with the example of the rain, what happens when it rains, who is upset, applies during this pandemic in our lives as well, because we can use it to avail ourselves of greater inner peace. Now, let me share with you this knowledge that is no knowledge for a moment. Fang Youlang, a Chinese philosopher, writer, and historian, said, speaking of De, meaning our inner nature, that the life that follows his or her inner nature, one's inner nature, lies beyond the distinctions of good and evil. Let me explain how this works for the sage. Supposing that this is the world and all of the opinions or things that we can know are in this circle, and divided them into two sides. So those who are for this versus those who are for that, those who think construction versus those who think distraction, and hold different points of view. Well, the sage stands in the middle of the circle because his point of view transcends the distinctions that otherwise knowledge makes when it makes differences. One example, when presented with a wooden table, those on the this side see construction. When those at the bottom of the circle look at the wooden table, they think of the tree that had to be cut out, and they see destruction instead. But the sage stands in the middle because in his understanding, as he sees all things as a whole, connected, his point of view is with Tao. And so he transcends this, his understanding transcends the differences that otherwise people would make. This understanding of the sage allows one to transcend the distinction of things, which is, at least in part, to live in harmony with others and with oneself. And this harmony comes from understanding that we are not only part of a family or a society or a country or the planet, but of a universe, and that we are all connected through Tao, and that we are all law governed, and that we depend upon the same laws to enjoy this inner peace and harmony. And in that way, Tao preserves us all under the same standard. Chuang-Tzu, a also Taoist philosopher, said, "The universe is the unity of all things. If we attain this unity and identify ourselves with it, then life and death, end and beginning, are but as the succession of day and night, with which cannot disturb our inner peace." And so this naturalistic view and understanding of the world grants this point of view, where the sage sees all as one and allows him to, as one goes through difficulties, have a different point of view that allows him or grants him greater strength. As far as this knowledge, there is no knowledge. I like to share how in society, in our culture nowadays, I believe we tend to look too much at we tend to give value to things that have utility, meaning I speak such and such language, or I've studied this, or I have this job and this position, or on social media, look at this new watch I have, or last cell phone or whatnot. And so we fill our curriculums or our Instagram and whatnot with these things that exist, and we give them value. Laozi speaks of the liberating notion of simply being ourselves, acting spontaneously, naturally. Bruce Lee said it this way. He said at an interview, you can find in YouTube, that expressing yourself honestly, not lying to yourself, is very difficult to do. And so if we look at life only through this lens of utility, of what is, I think it is little wonder that we oftentimes miss the usefulness in our lives and those things that can grant us greater peace and harmony and allow us to further rest at ease. Certainly still going through hard times, but this perspective can certainly help us to deal with those circumstances differently, with much less stress, I would say. And so if we open our eyes through this COVID-19 situation, I think that throughout this period of not fun, being locked down and other things that we have been forced to not do and change in our lives so abruptly and for such an extended period of time, we now can appreciate, I think most of us, the beauty of the world, the beauty of being able to go outside, we can appreciate that we are not perhaps so eager to continuing to pollute the world, and we may do our part much better now out of that realization. Once we come out and enjoy the surroundings, we may feel too farther to stop just to look at the grass or the lake or hear the birds or enjoy the sun and bathing our skin and breathe the fresh air. Those things that have always been there, but perhaps we took for granted. Likewise, we heard in the news in different countries have also realized things where they were lacking, their weak points perhaps in the health system. We may have been relying heavily on outside sources to be able to have our own materials. That is not a bad thing, but if we need it in case of an emergency, not being able to be self-reliant, that then becomes a bad thing. And learning these things, being able to, amidst the crisis, stop, look around and think of your life as well, allows us and gives us a perspective that otherwise we may not have considered. And if we act on it, we can improve our lives thereafter. And so, again, gaining understanding gives us this better chance to improve our behavior, but not necessarily when being forced by the circumstances. We can act throughout our lives according to this inner light that we have and continue to learn under any circumstances we find ourselves in. Laozi said, "We put 30 spokes together and we call it a wheel, but it is in on the spaces where there is nothing that the usefulness of the wheel depends." Again, that notion of things that we may oversee, but that if we stop to consider, there is much to benefit from and to use. Laozi also says that we build a house, but it is in the spaces where there is nothing, where the windows and the door goes, where the usefulness of the house is. And if you think about it and you take out that space for the window and or instead of having a house, you have at best a garage, an enclosure, that it's not a house. And so Laozi says, as we take advantage of what is, perhaps those things we put on our CV, the things that we are, that we do, or on our Instagram, the things that we do have, Laozi also says we should recognize the usefulness of what is not. Excuse me, please. Excuse me. If you have watched the movie The Karate Kid, Jaden, here on the bottom right, he has moved to China with his mom, and a group of high school kids bullied him, and he seeks help from Jackie Chan, who takes him to this gym where this youth trains, and he speaks to their trainer. And when they leave, Jackie Chan has ended up enrolling Jaden on a competition to fight with each one of these youth individually. And because they were speaking in Chinese, Jaden has no clue. And when he asks Jackie Chan and Jackie Chan tells him, Jaden thinks, what? That's the exact opposite of what we came here for to do. Now I'm in big trouble. Jackie Chan responds to him, to me, quite meaningfully, or in Chinese, although the movie is in English. And his reply is, 无极比方. And this is a common Chinese saying. It translates as, when a thing reaches one extreme, it reverts from it. And this Chinese common saying very likely comes from Laozi's quote that says that reversing is the movement of Tao. let's look at how this law operates, the law of reversing. Speaking of it, Laozi also said, "It is upon calamity that blessing leans, upon blessing that calamity rests. To go farther and farther is to revert again." And so we have a law of nature here with this concept of reversing. Fang Yolang explained it this way: if anything develops extreme qualities, those qualities revert to become their opposite. Laozi also said that the soft overcomes the hard. Consider this. Following this last quote, that the soft overcomes the hard, consider what would happen to a boat as it goes down the stream or down a river, as it meets hard with the rocks. The boat breaks and nothing much else is accomplished. Now take water. As it goes down the river and meets with the same rocks, it disdains them. Water continues thus its natural course. But moreover, over time, water has benefited all things, including the rocks, as its edges have become smoothed. Laozi also taught, diminish a thing and it will increase. Increase a thing and it will diminish. We see a pattern with Laozi. And how does it apply to this current situation? What might he tell us? According to this law of reverse, the anxiety that we may feel or fear because of this new pandemic, what we must do while this pandemic even is lasting, so far from thinking, oh, when this goes away, let's see. While we are going through these difficult times, we should reflect on ourselves, while we should also respect life principally, but also nature and science. Through respect and self-reflection, we can diminish this anguish that we feel because of this pandemic. This is done because, as Laozi taught, or this is how we actually, through this reflection and respecting of nature and science, life itself, this is how through a hard time we can go from calamity to blessing, as we read. But on the other hand, I think it's interesting to note that when times are fine and nothing seems to be a problem, really, so to speak, if we do not pay attention to ourselves, to our lives, we can actually easily be led to disaster as well. So acknowledging this law of reverse becomes, or can at least become, a way for us to help us not only accept, but to become more positive with our life's situation. I asked a Chinese friend of mine in China about this situation of the pandemic and how, as he's going through it. And he said the following. He said, Manolo, he said, if we do our part, because things have a way of reversing, we will usher in a turning point. And they really trust. This is not a nice quote to be put on the wall or to frame, but the Chinese people tend to live by it, by these ideals, by this philosophy, and it helps them through difficult times. And you can see a valiant and worthy behavior in their lives as they muster up that courage. Now, we do want to be careful not to reverse to anxiety as well, or to a worst of situation. Let me share an example of how to remain more calm by not overdoing. There is a story of two people. Okay, there's this Chinese story of two men that set out on a competition to see who would draw a snake first. The first one who finished looked at the other one who wasn't yet finished, and so he decided to decorate the snake. When the other one was finished, he said, "I won." Because, he said, a snake has no legs. This is very interesting, and let me move to this side instead, because I see I have this twice. Lesson number one I see that I would like to share. Life is to be enjoyed. But as we enjoy it, it is also crucial that we remain those lost that inner light and that we persevere doing according to the dictates of our better judgment and the understanding that we have been gaining through life. Meaning one cannot say, I made it. For whatever reason, I've achieved this point in my life. Instead, one needs to hit the end, as Laozi said, hit the end no less than the beginning. One needs to persevere and continue moving on, doing his best, doing his very best, so as to not miss the mark. This is how, in good times and difficult times, we can help preserve greater harmony and peace in our lives. Lesson number two. You may say, well, dragons don't exist. And the answer might be, well, that sure isn't a snake either. If we take this brief two-sentence dialogue into a conversation in real life, it may go something like this in order to apply it. One might say, well, this is not going to hurt anyone. The answer might be, well, it's also not going to help anyone. Meaning, we need to be consistent and do our very best self. We need to be respectful. We need to, as we approach this pandemic, we should keep social distancing, as we've been informed. We should wear masks when appropriate as needed. We should do these things that we are told and show respect for others and for the self. And in doing our best, then trust things that the situation will revert. There will be, and we will see this turning point. Laozi said, the sage is always helping others in the best way possible. Now, the sage is the ideal man in Laozi's philosophy. Laozi also spoke of helping as key to return to the original, meaning helping is key to help us conduct our lives alongside our inner nature. He also said that water benefits all things, and water is a metaphor for goodness and the greatest good. And so whether it be the sage, how to lead our lives in line with our inner nature to who we are, or whether it be speaking about the ideal behavior through the metaphor of water, benefiting or helping is key to help us not overdo in our daily actions. And by so doing, helping us again remain not overly anxious, which would not help anyways. Let me look at not reversing by practicing enlightenment. And practicing enlightenment is, Laozi taught, knowing the laws of nature and taking them as our guide. In other words, we spoke of following our inner light to gain understanding. This behavior is to practice enlightenment when taken as a lifestyle. So the person that wants to practice enlightenment has these two general rules to remember and take into account. If what one wants to do is to achieve, one should start with the opposite of what we want to obtain. But if we want to retain, we need to admit something of the opposite. For example, if I want to become my very best self, I need to recognize that I am not that good yet. Let me move along. If I want to retain something I already have, I need to remain to act according to the principles of being meek, humble, content. Lao Tzu said that to know how to be content is to avoid humiliation. So these principles allow us to not go over the mark. There is, with all of these things, a harmony that we see in nature. This harmony, interestingly enough, is preserved because of the outcomes of opposites. So a situation that seems contradictory does not bring harmony. But if you act according to your inner light, the outcomes do bring harmony and no understanding to one's life. So in our lives, the useful quality will be to remain active in a manner that will not break us, but preserve ourselves. In this way, after we do all that we can do, in death or in life, Lao Tzu says, he sees harmony that will benefit our lives if we act accordingly. And when I say in death, I mean that in Lao Tzu, in Daoism, death is simply to follow the natural course and to go back to the mansions or homes in the universe. Let me finish with this. With Lao Tzu, what is it that we can take to take comfort in? We've seen that there is no physical solution to a problem, but there is a perspective, an understanding that can help us look at life in a way that is going to be beneficial to ourselves, even during hard times. We've also seen, okay, I know that's a Chinese character, but maybe I don't understand it. That's what inner light is. We know what we should do, but understanding comes when we apply that inner light that we have. And when we do so, we are walking a lifestyle that is going to lead to giving us this ability to control our emotions, because we will have gained understanding. And thirdly, I thought to ask, what is your third point? What do you take from this? I hope there will be something that you have heard or read or has come to your mind that will be helpful by means of helping provide further peace and comfort in these difficult times. I acknowledge that this is not easy, and some people have also lost loved ones. If it is your case, my sincere condolences. Thank you very much for listening. And that's it. Should I stop sharing my screen?
Yes, I'll bring myself back now. Thank you, Manuel, for those inspiring thoughts and words. A question in the chat I will read out to you. You mentioned helping others in the section of overdoing. So would you mind re-elaborating the relationship between helping others and not overdoing?
Thank you very much. Yes, I did not elaborate enough. Thank you. When we help others, not once, in the month, but when in our lifestyle we become aware of those around us enough that we can go and help them, we, to that degree, stop focusing on ourselves. And when not everything is about me, although work is so worthy to provide, although studying is so crucial to help me prepare myself, although exercising is so important and I need to make time for exercising, when not everything is about me, although I am engaging in praiseworthy activities, if you will, in virtuous endeavors, but we do give ourselves time to stop and help others. That helps prevent ourselves from the deception of, I'm not doing much for other people really, but I'm preparing myself, and in the long run, I would help others because I'll be better prepared. We should do good day by day instead of focusing on ourselves, so that maybe in the long run, in 4 or 5 years, when I finish my career, this is just to put an example, I will have time to then help others in a different way. So if we are too self-centered, we really end up overdoing without noticing it, because we're focused on the self rather than working together with those around us. Thank you.
Thank you. I haven't got any other questions in the chat. I wonder if...
I can share something.
I have got one more here from Carol. Thank you. She's asking, what about positive emotions? For example, love.
Wonderful. Again, all that comes from Tao is good, because Tao is the absolute truth. Tao explains that we're here. Tao explains why we have this inner light. Now, anything, love including, taken to the extreme becomes bad. So there is, in other words, we need to use our inner light to make good use of love and other attributes, and also to not touch what already we understand we should not go there or do that. So when it comes to emotions that are good, so long as they are expressed within the bounds of natural law, then it is good. Otherwise, we run the risk of even calling evil good in the name of love, for example, because we go over, we break the law. Okay, we go this law that is of Tao. I hope this makes sense. That was a good question.
Thank you. We've got a comment from Yuan simply saying thank you for a simple to understand explanation of quite complex principles. Your talk has triggered interesting connections for me, so that's nice to hear.
Thank you.
Lenovo would like to know how best to tell people not to blame or not to complain.
Could you repeat the question? How best to tell people?
Not to blame, to point the finger at someone, and not to complain about the situation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, I think that the best thing to do is, one, to be an example. So it will be easy for one who doesn't complain to start complaining, because perhaps he's next to someone that does complain. So one would be to be an example, whatever they do, whether they decide to stop complaining, for example, in this question or not. And that speaks louder than words. We've heard that, but it is not only cliche, it's true. Number two, teaching. If I am to use Laozi's philosophy or his belief, rather than being forceful, when given the opportunity, we should explain or talk about it. One might even talk about, how do you feel when you talk this way about, the situation? You're so right that it's so difficult, that this many people have died. How do you feel when you talk this way? And chances are, if he's complaining, that the spirit is not constructive, it's not very good. And pointing that out and somehow helping him or her understand that there is a better way than complaining. Although one may feel that it is really justified in complaining, but there's always a better way, a more constructive way to live your life. Thank you. Good question.
Thank you very much. That seems to be everything in the chat. So I can conclude, I suppose, asking everybody to take a few minutes to complete a short survey that I've just shared the link in the chat for you, just to help us really to build on this experience and share any ideas or suggestions how we can improve in the future. That'd be fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, Manuel, do you want to say a few last words before we finish the session?
It's okay. Well, no, yeah, sorry. These were simply some key concepts that people may just want to take. That's it. No, you're good. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for a very inspirational, fantastic talk this evening. I hope everybody enjoyed it.
Well, I enjoyed being here and I enjoyed those questions. Those were very good questions. Thank you for those that asked them as well. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So there's lots of comments now in the chat box saying thanking you. So okay. I will send them over to you just so you see what.
Thank you everyone for being here.
Okay, lovely. So yes, I will end the session now, and we'll hope to see you for any other online events that we organize in the future.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I wish you all the best. See you soon.
Thank you. Same to you, Manuel. Same to you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.